Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Too Many Men. My name is Alison Lucan, and I'm delighted to not just introduce my co-host, but introduce a new game that I have just invented with Sarah Sivian's help, and that is the motivational Too Many Men points awarding system. Today, in a first, not a first, a rare miracle occasion, Sarah Sivian was in fact early to our recording time and has been awarded two Too Many Men points. Congratulations, Sarah. You've had a chock full sports weekend and enjoying life, which I love to see. How the hell are you?
I'm great. I mean, I will say we can shave off half a point because my computer died. And then I got back at 106 and I still beat Shayna. So maybe two again. We're back at two. I am doing pretty good today. Shocking news.
And we'll give her a little bit of grace because I don't know anyone who definitely commits and is passionate about things more than Shayna Goldman, because this woman is staying up till all hours to watch what she loves, and that is tennis. She was texting me about the AO. I'm like, what the hell's the AO? And it's apparently the Australian Open. So, you know what? It's something I really admire is your commitment and your ability to understand so much about so many things with great care and detail. But you are docked too many men points for being tardy to the
Okay.
recording. Shayna, say hi.
Hi. I really like that you pumped me up and then knocked me right down. It's what I need today.
Well, listen, we're truth tellers here at Too Many Men. That's what we say we do. So we got to keep ourselves accountable. Here we are. All right, my friends. Sarah, please tell us what time it is.
It's time for you to ask me my address again and tell me that Benny Drawbar has sent me something and we're doing something great and a bit of news.
I'll put the drum roll right there. Perfect. We love it. Okay. Yes, it is time for Bit O News. And we have some little pieces to talk about, but we're going to talk about something. Here's what's going to be fun today, friends. We have some big stories, and some of them, one of the three of us had absolutely no idea about coming into this episode or shortly before. And the first one, I'm the one on the short end of the stick, but it does feel reminiscent of where we were way back in 2016 with the GIF controversy. And that is that apparently content creators, and this is something that Shayna and I have done for years as well, just not on YouTube, have been grabbing GIFs and video of NHL hockey games and including it on their shows on YouTube. And the NHL now claiming that it was a settings error. God, I wish I could just claim all my mistakes were a settings error and not my fault. But claiming it was a settings error, all of these videos were being banned for copyright infringement of NHL footage. Apparently, this is now fixed, but this has caused a lot of ruffles in the NHL's ability to help grow the game and feed content creation. It isn't lost on us that this is the same league that has intentionally hired and announced and promoted that they've brought in content creators to hashtag grow the game. Shayna, before we get into the what we think of it, can you just make sure and round out any details I missed on this because I was late to the game on this one?
No, I think you have it right that, people who use clips, whether it's to break down games or promote the game in all different ways on YouTube, are seeing their content be limited because of the NHL saying this is infringement. You can't use their clips, which isn't within their rights, but then there's a whole fair use conversation. But as you said, they do invite content creators to certain events like the Winter Classic, and you can create content about the NHL on their terms, but not on your own.
Correct. And again, this is interesting because now, even though some videos, the restrictions are being lifted, the monetization has been removed from these videos. And so curators and creators are curious if that's going to be allowed going forward as well. There's a great article that summarized all of this on Awful Announcing. But Sarah, like I said, and we were all around for it, there used to be, and she's still around just in a different role. There's a wonderful human named Stephanie Vale who used to be, I still don't know how she did it. She live gift like every single game as it was happening every single day. And there was a big controversy back then about the NHL basically saying they weren't going to allow fan created gifts. That obviously got rolled back eventually because you see where we are today. But Sarah, conceptually, I know we were talking about this in our chat. How can the NHL be better at this? They seem to never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And this feels like one of them to me.
Well, they could be better at it by being a better league. Like it all goes hand in hand with their insecurity of not getting like as much views as the other networks, in my opinion. I mean, like you have I should start creating gifts so I can have money to watch all of the channels I need to watch to see these games with my own eyeballs. You know what I mean? It's like you have to subscribe to 5 channels to see anything in your region. And then you might not even, you might get totally blacked out. You see all of these kind of like disputes with these. It's an absolute mess. I think there needs to be like regulation on how many stations can do, and that goes for every league, but
100% every
it's just
sport.
kind of, it's all connected where it's like, just let the people do the gifts. If you're really like, are you really that insecure about your league not getting the eyeballs? And like, what if like one person is going viral one day? Like, how does that really financially impact you to that extent?
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, like it's the hardest thing to do in any business is acquire new business, whether it be that you're selling shoes or that you're selling a sport. That's why you want to retain customers because that's cost effective. To acquire new customers is the most expensive thing to do. And if you have people who are out there selling the most exciting moments of the sport, it's to your point, it's not like we have in the US at least, it's not like we have a go-to resource outside of watching the actual game that's already there provided by the league that's instantaneous. Here's the moments that are pretty cool from someone who literally intimately knows this team. Shayna, what do you think about all this?
It's all so archaic from the NHL. And, it's amazing they think growing the game is going to show some random influencer skating on the ice at the Winter Classic versus someone breaking down clips. And, I've been looking at this a lot on TikTok, like how people are doing it.
RIP.
And sorry, they have a
No,
lot of
don't even.
thoughts. They have a
I'm
lot
in
of thoughts if you
denial.
can hear in the background. I'm sorry. Um, but like there are some, I saw a page recently that is someone breaking down the rules and they're using clips to do it. And it's a woman doing it. I wish I had her handle. I'm very sorry about that. But just being like, hey, so you want to get into hockey? Here's what you need to know. Like, this is what the offside rule is. And here's a clip. And she's explaining it quickly in a way that you want to consume it. That's good for the game. Having someone break down a power play, like I know Jesse Marshall does on YouTube, is good for the game because it's a complicated sport to understand, and it's not always the most welcoming to new people. So if you can find a way to bring in new fans without lifting a finger or spending a dime, you should be thrilled if you're the NHL. And it seems like other leagues are so ahead of the NHL in this whole sphere. The other part of it is, and I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat right now, is that with TikTok dying, a lot of people are going over to YouTube for YouTube Shorts instead of using Reels. And the timing of this just feels like very suspicious to me because stop the TikTokers who might be using clips. Remember with the GIF controversy, it was 7 seconds or less was
The GIF
for a
controversy.
video. Yeah, whatever. And 15 seconds or less, I think, was talked about as well. So here's a new way for short form content. And on YouTube, I think you're going to be a little bit looser with it than you might have been on TikTok. Like no time to just stomp on that before it starts as everybody's shifting over. All you're doing is hurting yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely frustrating, and I would just love to see hockey be a little more open, or excuse me, I should say the NHL. That is the proper way to frame this, is see the NHL be a little bit more open. And again, like this will help grow your game. I had another point too, but I've actually forgotten it. So here we are. All right, let's move on to some other news first. And I love this. This is so great. We put it out from the account, but in an awesome, awesome move. And shout out to our friend Alyssa Lire on Twitter. She called attention to this because I missed it at first. But the PWHL, which continues on their insanely wonderful takeover tour that is setting records and drawing so many eyeballs. Oh, look, marketing your game. Who knew? It's a screenshot of one of their broadcasts, and they called a rush an odd woman rush. We tweeted it from the account and said our work here is done. It's not a big deal, but it is a big deal. Sarah, we were chatting about this. Just what this is cool. This is cool. This is meaningful. I've tried to start saying defender in all cases when I cover the game. JT Brown on our broadcast last night was saying too many skaters instead of too many men, which of course maybe he should market our podcast more, but we'll take it. Sarah, what does this mean to see a league taking just a little step like this?
It's great. I mean, who does this hurt? If you're offended by this, you are a snowflake and you got to go back to your safe space. We created the safe space for you. It's it's the easiest thing you can do. And aren't these the same people, like the people that are getting offended? Aren't they the people that don't want trans people to exist? So you're mad they're calling women women. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that one, but I think people just want to be mad so bad because they have nothing truly bad going on in their lives, or they're getting distracted from the actual things that they could work on in therapy. So they take it out on somebody like JT Brown saying the word skater. If that triggers you, seek psychological help. But anyway, let's focus on the good. I am happy that we can. I love Alyssa because she is always like teetering on joking around about things. Like we're allowed to have jokes in this community, and she does a great job at it. And that's another example. So follow her for PWHL takes. And yeah, I mean, it's a women's hockey league, and there's skaters and people and defenders. Like that is even easier to say, especially if you have a Canadian accent.
Shayna, I think Sara makes an awesome point, right? Because it's not like this is some big agenda. The game used to be just men. So it makes sense to say odd man rush. It makes sense to say defenseman. But when other people start playing the game, just like you wouldn't want to be called by a name that isn't yours, you adapt your terminology to reflect who's playing the game. The P-Dub is just ruling right now. What do you think of just little touches like this? And maybe you have some thoughts on the bigger performance of the league in general.
Yeah, no, I think that it's a good thing because it's a way to like readjust your mindset too. And I'm sure we're all gonna have slip ups. I know for me, I'm writing an article to write she, not he, is an adjustment because 99.9% of the time I am writing about the men. I love that I have to think about it. I love that I know to write defender or skater or center or something like that to keep it more vague. Like it's a different adjustment, but it's a good one to have to make. It's like recalibrating our brains because here it is. There is a professional women's hockey league that is thriving. Um, but so like little tweaks and adjustments are always good to see. Seeing too many players on, the score bug when there's a penalty, like it's going to help, I think. And nobody's saying it has to change all over the place. But when you're watching the P-dubs, like you should be seeing the right terminology used. So I think it's a good thing. And it's not really surprising that they're the ones, like pushing the limits and pushing the pace and making the change because that has been their identity this entire time. So this is just like another thing that goes into the big picture.
And shout out to Colorado too, that set a new US record for attendance for a P-Dub game, although it pisses me off you took over from Seattle, but that's fine. We'll allow it in celebration of the
Wait,
game.
can we
Yeah.
add to
Yes.
we had boots on the ground there.
I
My
saw.
best yeah, my best friend Emily went and she was wearing her Too Many Men sweatshirt, of course, to represent. We love to see it. And where can you buy that merch, Allison?
Too many men merch.com. I love this. This is one of those organic ones that unfortunately they don't make anymore, but I love this
Yeah.
so much.
Can
Yeah,
I say
we're
another
looking to
really
it.
good attendance thing?
Yes.
The
Yes.
women's bean pot had the most attendance out of any bean pot ever last weekend. How awesome is that?
So
I love
cool.
it.
And did you guys hear Brian Burke on the sheet talking about the P-Dub?
No, I need to
No.
watch more of this sheet. We love Jeff.
Okay. First of all, so much. I mean, I know we picked on him before, but again, I think at his core, like what he's trying to do is so amazing. He talked because he is currently, Shayna, keep me honest here. He is the leader of the Players League for the P-Dub right now, or part of the board. He's
I
part of the
believe so, yeah.
leadership group. Yes.
Yeah.
He was talking to Jeff Merrick about how he's like, literally, I've told,
Executive Director
thank you.
of the PWHL Players Association.
Thank you. He was telling Jeff how he literally is like, I'll do this for this certain period of time, but then I'm out because I should not be leading this. A woman should be leading this. And when Jeff asked him about expansion, he's like, we have challenges. We have to fix the attendance issues and accessibility to the location in a couple cities like Boston. Like it was like talk about someone who's truly growing the game and trying to lead. Like I just thought it was really cool. You should listen to that too.
Yeah,
And
no, but you're
Massachusetts' very own.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's like it's encouraging to see because as much as people could say, why is he in the role to begin with? It's because he has experience and he knows what he's doing. And I think he's someone that can add stability. And it's not to say a woman couldn't do it, but it's someone that is ready to do this at this moment instead of putting anyone else in that maybe would be out of their depths and helping get things going. And then you can pass the baton for someone to take it to new heights and new ways. And I think it's so great because you're literally seeing growth by the day. And yes, there are issues like you said, Boston's attendance. I know New York's is, here or there, they're having issues, but it's a learning curve and they're doing it on the fly. Like this is what happens. Speaking of women's sports, did you guys see the report on the women's sports bar coming to Pennsylvania?
Which I mean I've seen I
I think it was
happily
called
see
Title
so many.
Nine.
Yes, I did see
Oh,
that.
I
Yes.
love that.
And the comments were unsurprising. Everyone being like, it's gonna fail, it's gonna go bankrupt, it's gonna
Check out
this.
the Rough and Tumble pub out here in Seattle. It's thriving. Women owned, women
It,
sports geared.
it's so great to see. And it's so amazing how people get so salty over its creation. Meanwhile, how many of these men don't want women coming
Hooters,
to
folks.
It's
Hooters.
it's so funny, Shayna, because in the 1 minute, somehow I crammed this into the 1 minute before I beat you on this podcast. Me and Allison were talking about like I had been scared to maybe get fired or speak out for like what I believe in or feel like, oh, I'm going to alienate my audience because people want to make you believe that there's not an audience of like-minded people that believe in rights for all, you know what I mean, in hockey. But the louder I've gotten, the more of an audience that actually reads my content, supports me, helps me live a freelance lifestyle I've gotten. And there's been somebody that couldn't come in our podcast like a year ago because or 2 years ago maybe because she didn't want anybody in her realm to lose a job. And now I've just seen her absolutely flourish and get louder and thrive with her voice. And she's become such a cool leader in hockey content. And I
I
just
think
think
she's going to come
it goes
on
to
here,
show,
and
yeah,
I think she's coming on here in the
we're
next
getting
couple
her
months
on.
for a very important
Yeah.
event. So we'll
People
tease
try
that
to
one.
silence us. We just keep selling shit out. We keep we're making a living on our Substacks and we keep having successful sports bars. So just keep going. Any
Yep.
woman or like person that is a minority listening to this, keep going. We see you, we support you, and others do too.
Yep. And anyone that has their first comment has to be, let me drag this down, as if you want women's sports on in your bar. Maybe you don't. Like, you should be happy that someone else has a place to do their thing and you can do your own shitty thing in your own shitty corner and just rot with it. Like, it, everybody wants to drag everybody else down to this miserable level. Like, I'm sorry, that's where your brain goes first and you have nowhere else to put your anger that you decide I need to tweet about it. But like, go touch some damn grass. And yeah, and you're completely right, Sarah. Like, that's the attitude to have. Like, I know for me, my answer to everything is like, all right, fuck you, fire me. And I can see every time I say that, like I see Rich like cringe a little bit, like stop having that attitude. But it's like it's the truth. Like when you want to like find your niche, right? And you need to find your voice in a way that works for you. And if it's talking about women's sports or promoting this or putting people in their place for being just total assholes for no reason, like that's what you got to do.
I don't really know how to transition from this. I feel very empowered and very important, and now I'm going to go to something completely stupid.
Back to the
That's the
men.
podcast. That's what we do here. So enjoy.
All right. So in lesser inspiring news, and this is it's nothing to do with the player. It's just that I thought that was really good conversation. There is a report. Hell, I usually can make these work. This one just doesn't, folks. Record scratch. Here we are. Darren Dreger is reporting that 32-year-old John Klingberg is closing in on resuming his NHL career and reports that Toronto, Ottawa, and of course Edmonton are among the teams with expressed interest. He says that there is a decision expected in the next couple weeks. He had hip resurfacing surgery in 2023, and ultimately there are 5 to 7 teams in the mix. Poorly worded tweet. We probably could have put that when you named the other teams, but here we are. I'm not a grammar editor for you. Thoughts on John Klingberg returning to the NHL, Shayna?
I mean, listen, I think he was someone that was so easy to dunk on last year, and it was less because of his game and more because the Maple Leafs handed him a contract they shouldn't have when they had Eric Gustafsson, who could have been had for less than $1 million a year, and they gave, what was it, $4.5 million to John Klingberg, which should have never happened. Um, there are definite flaws to his game. We've seen him drop off since his peak years in Dallas, and he took a risk and bet on himself, and it didn't work out. We don't know how long he was dealing with the injury. We don't know how much that was impacting his game last season. And I think the other thing is like we need to like recalibrate our minds on how we think of injury recovery timelines. I think that there have been a lot of players that have been good lessons in it, like Matthew Tkachuk coming back from a broken sternum. No wonder he wasn't amazing off the bat. And even Tom Wilson, you look at how he's thriving this year. Like maybe there players need a little bit more grace than the timeline that is put out there. So I do wonder where his game truly at this point, and if he's ready for it. And you hope for the players' sake that they are. But it'll be interesting to see what teams bet on him and for how much. Edmonton, I know, wants defense. Toronto definitely could use a puck mover. I look at Florida and I think they could use someone to kind of own the offensive side of the game since they lost Montour. But it's a true reclamation project and it's a true risk because you just don't know where he is at this age with the injury in mind, plus his declining game.
Sara, would you sign Klingberg?
Really depends on the price and the situation, as like would be my answer for everything. But I think one of the most successful trends you see, especially, I mean, I guess with the Hurricanes, because I was around them, it's just having as many defensemen that have been in a somewhat veteran position as possible to kind of run through on your way to a deep playoff run. Like if I think any team that's kind of gearing up for a deep playoff run with kind of weak defensive depth should probably sign him and see what happens. Like you have to, now the ball's in his court though to see if he'd want to take on that sort of role. But I think we're seeing more and more players kind of come at the deadline that are older, that have gone through surgeries. And it's like, I mean, Tarasenko kind of comes to mind in that kind of way, Patrick Kane, where they're kind of 50% off and you know what you're going to get. And they didn't have to play the first half of the season. So they're kind of refreshed to some degree.
Excellent. I also remembered
Justin Williams.
Justin Williams. I do have to go back real quick. I remembered my point about the videos on YouTube. This is just like when the league said no one cares about cap data. And here we are in a year where one NHL team literally bought Cap Friendly and the St. Louis Blues released their very own version of it. So anyway, here we go.
Yeah, the NHL has a great grip on things. And it's so funny too, now that you bring up that point. Did you see like some of their social media content? I think it was like our Gen Z admin made this
Who's?
TikTok. The NHL they made a TikTok of it and it was like our Gen Z admin like did a summary of the last year. I guess it
Yeah.
was like a New Year's post and I just saw it delayed. And I'm like, see, like you have the vision in like 1% of your brain. Now let those young up and coming voices start leading the way a little bit more. Like maybe they have more ideas than just TikToks. Like there are things to do.
Yes. All right, let's move on to our last bit of news. And it's it's funny. Again, I live in it, so you see a lot of it, but some people may not have seen it. It's kind of funny. These last two bits of news are lightly connected, and that's just that there were some reports over the weekend after CEO Todd Lewicki joined the Seattle Kraken on a road trip. And then some erroneous rumors started to get out there. And ultimately, general manager Ron Francis came on our show yesterday. Again, we are recording on Wednesday, so this was Tuesday, to talk about the state of the team that, as he said, is obviously underperforming where they thought they would be. And also, there are injuries with Jordan Eberle and now Yanni Gourde both out for big chunks of time. But I thought it was really valuable for Ron Francis to do that. I thought sometimes we see GMs come on and it's just a lot of cliches and things like this. And I thought Ron was very earnest and very honest and was open to being asked about the rumors. And then his team goes out and actually wins a game, which is good for him. And ironically, then Tristan Jarry is on waivers as a result of a 4-2 loss out of Pittsburgh. So again, Ron Francis, in my opinion, what I respect about when he builds a team is that it is patient, it is smart. I look at moves like Capo Caco, sorry, Shayna. I look at moves like Ellie Tolvanen. I look at moves like Oliver Bjorkstrand. He's building from nothing here. So I don't know. I've always said the window for this team is longer. Obviously, this group isn't where they're supposed to be based on what you look at on paper, and he's keenly aware of that fact. But it seemed to catch more fire than I thought it needed to. I was on the trip. I saw Todd. I was like, hi, Todd, and continued with my day. So, Sara, I know you covered Ron Francis in Carolina too. Again, some GMs would just ignore it or hide. He does come out and just make some comments. Any additional thoughts on just you were the person that didn't know anything about this going into our podcast?
I know. I had a busy schedule over here.
Listen, I didn't know anything about the whole YouTube thing. So anything you want to add on the situation or any takes just having covered Francis in the past?
Yeah, it's just funny to see like what blows up, but generally comes from places of people not understand, like having a fundamental misunderstanding of how these relationships work and how they vary from team to team.
Shayna, I don't know if you have anything to add on Francis, but boy, can we talk about Tristan Jarry. He's on waivers, expected to be on waivers Wednesday. This will all come out after that fact. I highly doubt he'll be claimed. Did the Kraken break Tristan Jarry? I say no, but what does this do for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and how does this impact their decision making and how they go forward in that?
Just one thought on Ron Francis and
Yeah.
what you mentioned. He has a patient approach. He has always had a patient approach. Before he signed Chandler Stevenson and Brandon Montour to those contracts, he had never signed contracts to that of that magnitude. Vince Dunn's AAV, if I remember correctly, was the highest AAV he
Yes.
ever signed a player to. Like, if you didn't think this was the approach he was going to bring, then I don't know what you were looking at, because that is who he is. And like you said, I do like some of those moves, like getting Kako. That was those are the steals that you should be looking for, and guys like Bjorkstrand, like, I don't know, but yeah. Speaking of Tristan Jarry, it's been a tough year for him. And it feels like it's funny because a couple weeks ago, it's like, oh, maybe the Penguins have a little bit of life.
Right.
And I looked at them and didn't think, oh, this is a playoff team, even considering how much everyone in the East sucks. You were like, okay, maybe, like, it seems like they have the vision of going for those younger players. And the Tomasino trade is exactly what they should be angling for, those types of moves. But the goaltending has been so inconsistent, so you have to do what you have to do. And obviously, I don't think anyone's going to claim this contract. I feel like this is one you're going to have to offload with salary retention if you're going to move it. But if it sends him back down to the AHL to refresh his game again, which seemed to work for him before, like, so be it. But they don't have many choices here. It's not a good situation. And the Penguins are trending very much in the wrong direction lately.
Very much. Yes, indeed. All right, let's move on to our hockey talk. And Sara, we are going to go to a team in your backyard. We've talked about the fact that there is a hashtag rift in Vancouver between two stars. The Boston Bruins took that personally and created a rift of their own, with Brad Marchand and Pasternak's reportedly having problems, which both of them came out and in a quite entertaining fashion denied. But since then, after 6 games without a win, they have back-to-back wins. Are the Bruins back on track, Sara? Or is it just the power of the moms?
Oh my goodness. It's really, well, Jeremy Swayman has been really good this month. He's had a solid month. And I think it was always going to be like, no pressure, kid. But if you play well, they're going to be fine. And if you don't, they won't. Like, that's literally what this team is hinging on, because you can't expect them to have sustainable scoring knowing like who is at center for them. So I'm not going to say they are back on track. I'm going to say that they are the team. This looks like what I expected from them all along.
Do you have any takes on the reported rift that both players have adamantly denied?
Yeah. I mean, the adamantly denying is really the most important thing here, no matter what happened. I mean, I think Keith does have sources around the team, but I think probably what happened was it was blown out of proportion. There weren't specifics. I think, why wouldn't they be having a rift? They're the two really competitive players on a typically competitive team. All Pastrnak knows since he entered the league is winning. And then they're really close and they light each other's fires. You know what I mean? They're leaders in the group. Like, why wouldn't they kind of go at it with each other? I think that probably happened once and somebody got scared and called their mommy or something. And then it's like, now they're not friends. No, of course they're best friends. Or they, like, sometimes I beef with my best friends because it's the people that like understand, you know what I mean? So they probably got something off their chest, but that's complete speculation on my end. Why wouldn't they be doing that? But obviously the proof is in the handling of that. That's a great captain in Marchand, and that's like them laughing it off and posting on Instagram is how you react to that.
And I'm looking here, oh yeah, and Pasta assist, it was the only assist on Brad Marchand's goal last night, which is of course proof that everything is fine. Shayna, your take on the Bruins, and we've talked about them a couple times, and we know that this isn't the Bruins of years past. They do have significant underlying issues. Sara mentioned their center depth, but are they back on track, or is there still just concerns for how they're playing under the hood? Forget the rift and the supposed drama.
No, I still have concerns because at the end of the day, this roster is flawed. It was flawed last season. It was flawed to start this season. they changed their coach. I think that I know like some now it's like revisionist history, like they shouldn't have done that. Like no, I'm still with that. I still think that was a necessary step, but it couldn't have been the only step. And I think you're seeing that this roster still has flaws. And before their back-to-back wins here, that 6-game winless streak, their defense was really bad. And I know they were without Hampus Lindholm, and I know Charlie McAvoy was playing injured, and now he's obviously out. Um, but their 5-on-5 defense is trending in the wrong direction. Their 5-on-5 offense is underwhelming. Their penalty kill is uncharacteristically bad. And I think you're just seeing the fundamental flaws in this roster. Like they overpaid Elias Lindholm for a role that is above his depth. And maybe they thought that playing him with Pastrnak would help elevate him because he doesn't have to be the play driver on his line. Sometimes the winger can be when the winger is that elite, but it just hasn't worked out. The Zadorov contract looks like a weight. So and years of shitty drafting is biting them. So it's all coming to a head now, and I think that they could continue on this path and maybe make the playoffs, right? They're in wild card two right now. They have a good chance because there's so many teams that suck in the East and the Atlantic Division, especially with both Florida teams going through their own problems right now. Like they're right there. But I think at a certain point, you need to take a step back, look at yourself, and really figure out your trajectory and go, is this working enough? Or are we just going to go to the postseason, win around or lose around, but at least we get that one experience behind, like under our belt. Like, I don't think this is that. If the Blue Jackets were to do that tomorrow, you'd be like, that's a young up and coming team. They're about to play meaningful hockey. The Bruins don't need to learn how to play meaningful hockey. They have to learn how to excel in the postseason and actually go on a real run.
And to your point, Shayna, the Boston Bruins do currently sit in the first wild card spot in the East, but they are tied with the Devils for most games played in the East in terms of teams that are also in a playoff position. So there's a lot of people coming, or a lot of teams coming for them with games in hand and points to be gotten. Just a quick yes or no poll. Sara, do the Bruins make the playoffs this year? She's shaking her head. She's
No. It's like the East is so insane. Nobody deserves to make the playoffs. I'm saying no to everybody.
Shayna, will the Bruins be in the playoffs this year?
Yes.
Okay.
They're going to
Very,
back their way in.
okay. Very good. Well, Shayna mentioned them, so let's talk about the team that is in the other wild card spot in the East, and that is the Columbus Blue Jackets. This was a team that, for very real reasons, both on and off the ice, I think people had very low expectations for coming into this season, but they have proven to found a way to rally around themselves. They had their fifth straight win last game. They've strung together wins over St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Seattle, St. Louis again, and last night, Philadelphia in a shootout. Zach Werenski is the league leader in goals by a defenseman, and he and Cale Makar are putting on a show in terms of who's going to be the league leader among defensemen in points. This team was always fun to watch, even last year, just highly inconsistent. Now they are in a playoff spot. They're 8-2-0 in their last 10. Shayna, what do you make of the Columbus Blue Jackets besides this just being a really awesome feel-good story? And let's remember, too, they're currently without Sean Monahan.
Yeah, this is the best story in the league. Their progress is legitimately impressive. I think that you see the up and coming talent that they have. Marchenko has been fantastic all year. To see Cole Sillinger progress and Ken Johnson is great.
Voronkov.
I mean, he's been amazing on that top line. And with Monahan, they were crushing it. Obviously, his absence is going to be something for them to navigate, but it opens up a chance for Adam Fantilli to get going in a really big role. And then once Monahan comes back, like you can figure out your lineup in a different way, whether Fantilli can jump into a different line and be the play driver, or maybe Monahan is, if that line shows enough chemistry to keep them together. I love Zach Werenski. Every year, I feel like I am pumping him up. Like we do fantasy content, and it's like you'll see like the NHL.com or average draft position, like cutting him short, or we're doing player tiers, and we are arguing for him to move up in it every time because he is so good, and it's really nice to see it because he's like the true number one defenseman on this team. I feel like he got overshadowed for years by Seth Jones, and now it's like this is his moment, and he is living up to it. And guys like Dante Fabro are helping make that happen. That was a really good pickup for them. So I mean, I think it's really exciting. You're seeing the coaching impact. I think we're learning more about Evason, who maybe we didn't know enough about just based on Minnesota alone. Like sometimes it takes a coach to be in multiple places to really learn their signature. And it's coming together in the right way that even if, say, they don't make the playoffs, it's a good story and it's a good step in the right direction for a team that I think we were all wondering what in the world was going to happen with them. Even when last season ended, there were some real question marks. So I think you're starting to see the vision come together, and these players are playing meaningful games, and that's important at this stage.
Sarah, going into this season, when we talked about the Blue Jackets, we had a discussion, a very real discussion of we didn't know how this team would even be able to go on the ice and play, given what they've gone through as a group, and even in not just this past summer, but in recent history. What do you make of what the Blue Jackets are doing right now? They're easy to cheer for.
Yeah, the easiest team to cheer for because of on and off the ice stuff. Like it's just why we love sports, right? And it doesn't mean that we would have blamed them if they played poorly. You know what I mean? I want to be careful talking about that when it comes to this team, but it is so beautiful that they're giving everybody kind of something to rally around and like how sports really can do that. But it's also like a really good team full of people that are believing in themselves, and that's paying off. I was seeing on the sheet Don Waddell's interview with Jeff Merrick, where he kind of said, "I owe it to this team. If we're still competitive at the deadline, I'm gonna make sure I respect that and I don't just sell just anybody. Like maybe Provorov if he's not going to sign." But I really like that. Did you see Marchenko's um, quote about Fantilli?
No, I don't think so.
He said, because they're on the line now, he said, when we build chemistry together, he will be Andrei Fentilov. Right now, he's Adam Fentilov. So they're just funny, easy to root for. And I'm so happy Werenski made the Four Nations.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to make a point of order because, again, as we've said, Zach Werenski, it's a smaller market team that doesn't get a lot of attention for very good reason. They have not been good for a while, but he hit the league well before Cale Makar and well before Quinn Hughes, and he was the current era of hockey's first rover. Not saying he's necessarily the best of all time, but I went back and looked at this and I was like, everyone says, oh no, Cale Makar is better. I'm not saying Cale Makar isn't necessarily better. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But we first heard Rover in terms of this new era of defensemen back in 2017 from John Tortorella, and it was about Zach Werenski. So he deserves his flowers.
And
That's
hold
all
on,
I'm gonna
remind
say.
me, Jared Bednar coached the AHL for them, right? And
Well,
he deployed him as a rover too.
that was kind of weird because so Zach played at Michigan, obviously, and then he the way they handled it was he did not sign his ELC. He signed an ATO and only played with them, I think, only in the playoffs. But
Okay.
yes, Jared Bednar was the coach, but it was a very small sample size, is my point.
It's a
It
nice
wasn't
warm up for him before getting Cal McCarr to be like, all
true.
right, Rovers in the pro game. But no, like it, and I think that's the thing. Like it's not going head to head. If you want to go head to head with them and go with them in the Norris conversation, like you could do that all day because the two of them would be in my top three if I had to pick right now. But like it's a different context of talking about them.
Yeah, okay, so I was incorrect. He did play 7 regular season games with the Lake Erie Monsters under Bednar, and then he played in 17 playoff games on the championship winning team. But again, I'm just saying the man deserves respect for being the first defender on the scene that was publicly
Yep.
getting attention for playing defense in a markedly different way and doing it well on both ends of the ice.
Under an old school coach, who knew?
Hmm, who's
Hmm.
to say? All right. Well, we've talked about a couple playoff teams in the East. Let's go west, my friends. And God bless you, Shayna, for preparing our notes for us today. Something I hinted at, actually flat out declared. The Vancouver Canucks, our other hashtag rifting team, are out of the playoffs as we record. They are sitting outside the final spot in the West, I believe by 1 point. I don't have that screen up for me right this second. They are getting healthier. They have withstood a stretch without Quinn Hughes, without Thatcher Demko, as Sarah Sivian first reported last spring, without Elias Pettersson, and now Philip Hronek is also back, but they get thumped. Understandably, the Winnipeg Jets, in my opinion, are the best team in the league right now, but thumped last night by the Jets. There's bad vibes in terms of rumors for trades. The Flames are in the second wild card spot ahead of Vancouver, something I don't think anyone saw coming. What do we make of the Canucks? Our friend of the pod, Thomas Drance, and I have had kind of a long running joke because coming into this year, he was like, will the Canucks be like the Seattle Kraken were the year after their surprising playoff run? Here we are, question mark. Sara, your thoughts on the Canucks?
I mean, God, that most recent loss, it was just deflating. And it just, all of the come from behind losses are really brutal. And it does point to something's off with the chemistry, something's off in the locker room. Like at a certain point, the skill has not decreased to this extent where they're now outside of the playoff picture.
Shayna, what do you
That's
think?
that's all there is to it.
Shayna, what do you think? And even players like JT Miller and Elias Pettersson who are rifting, they're not necessarily playing where they should play regardless of the rift. And for Pettersson, that extends into last season. What do you make of the Canucks?
Oh my God, the chaos. They're the drama we need this season. I love that we have no take backs here. The hot takes, like, see, this is how we make them. I feel like if they miss the postseason, we're gonna be 2 for 2 on the big ones because it was Montgomery being the first coach fired, and then the Canucks missing the playoffs. And Sarah, if the Ducks make the playoffs, then we are like
And
the Oracles.
I will do something. We'll figure out what I'll
We'll
do.
figure out something. But no, like
We'll
this
make Ducks
team, like
merch. They'll,
there we
they'll be
go.
America's team.
There we go.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, like the Canucks have so many issues right now, and some of it was just finding sustainability after having a great save percentage and shooting percentage last year. And I know as the year went on, they got better below the surface to back that up. But, like there's a reason we talk about sustainability, right? Like it doesn't always last, and you can't let that carry you into this year. Quinn Hughes is in my book top two in the Hart Trophy race. He is everything and more to this team. And that's great, right? There's nothing wrong with having an MVP. Every team has an MVP, but you don't want it that this team is so screwed without him. And a lot of it's because their top forwards are not playing up to the level that they need. You're seeing Pettersson step up while Miller is out, which just adds fuel to this situation that couldn't be in a better market. I mean,
Oh, it's
the whole
delicious.
thing. It's perfect. And then that's why like the Marchand situation is so funny because they're like, we don't have beef. And like obviously they're really good friends. And even if Pettersson and Miller aren't friends, like it just hasn't been handled in a way that would stop this. And maybe that would settle things down a little bit. But the fact that he's performing well when Miller's not in the lineup and then Miller's back, and it's like there's that inconsistency again. And yes, he's good defensively, but the offense, which they need him for, just isn't there. And then you're seeing Miller's defensive game trail off a lot this year, and he is looking like the player that we were talking about 2 years ago of can he still play center? And why is he out in 6-on-5 situations if they're just blowing games with him out there? So the whole thing is just a huge problem. The fact that they're healthy now, this is going to be a really good time now until I guess like Four Nations that break to get back on track. I know they had that big win in Toronto when no one expected them to because of travel issues, but then last night you allow 3 goals against before you even have 3 shots on goal. Like it's not great. This is the time now. The team is going to be at full strength. You need to figure out what you have in them and how best to proceed. And even if they're in wild card two, is the best path saying we're a playoff team and starting to buy at the deadline? Or do you step back? And I know I'm bringing this up like a lot, but I just think that there's a lot of value to it. And I also just right before this was writing something on it, so it's like fresh in my head. But like some teams need to be realistic about what they can do. And if you look at some of the teams in the Western Conference, I think every contender is flawed. You can make the argument at the Kings, Vegas, Edmonton, everyone has their flaws. But do the Canucks think that they are better than any of them? Like I would say right now, no. If their best players can be the best players, sure, but they need to prove that they can be, and it just isn't happening.
Sara, I know you have an affinity for the Canucks too, going all the way back to our dear Botchford, but let's talk about something interesting about what the Canucks are doing. While they are not winning, to Shayna's point, they are 3-4-3 in their last 10, and they lead the league in loser points. They have 10 overtime losses, overtime or shootout losses. I don't know that I mean, Rick Tocchet, I can imagine has been frustrated a lot, but if you're watching his avails, he seems really frustrated. Will this team back in because they are getting loser points more than anybody else? And what do you think of where Rick Tocchet is right now with this group?
It's it's the collapses, which is why I say they don't deserve it. I am really curious to see if they end up trading anybody big. if that really was the problem and now they can like thrive because they start strong and it's just kind of baffling to watch the L's pile up, which is why they're leading the league in loser points because they like got to the point and then they just let it fall apart. Like there's no resiliency. And that's kind of indicative of a locker room problem. So I need them to get a move on with the trade.
I would love to see a trade. And it's good to your point, Shayna, about this. What will they do before nations break? Here's what they face in the immediate future. Los Angeles, Edmonton, Buffalo, Edmonton, Washington, St. Louis, Nashville, Dallas. That's how their January concludes. So that is not necessarily an easy run for the Canucks. Curious to see what drama will come up next. One more team to talk about. And while they lost last night, it is the Detroit Red Wings. They have strung together 7 straight wins, and I forget the stat, but it's for like the first time since like 200 years. It's not really 200 years, but it was a long freaking time. But the Red Wings are now seemingly perhaps past just the impact of a new coach bounce, and maybe they've actually made some real changes. We were just there with Seattle, and while if you look at their underlying numbers before and after the coaching change, defensively, they're a lot better. But interestingly, if you look at what they're generating in terms of shot quality, it's pretty much the same pre and post coaching change. So they really are relying on their defense to keep them in games, even though they've been scoring goals. Sara, is this still post new coach bump, or do the Detroit Red Wings have a chance to shock the world and actually make the playoffs?
I know. Well, that's what they were supposed to do all along. So you're seeing the PK improve. You're seeing the power play maintain how good it was in the beginning of the season. And you're seeing them actually sustain offensive zone time. Like I forget what it even is when I'm talking about them. But it looks good to me. I think the fundamental changes of the things that were wrong show that like the coaching change really was needed here. And the systems are a bit different. So I want to give them a chance.
Shayna, again, defense has drastically improved. Like Sara said, the power play is pumping out goals. I think they had a power play goal in like 8 straight or something like that, but they're still 4 points out of a playoff spot. They have games in hand, but not a ton. They're part of that mushy, jammed up middle of the East. Have the Detroit Red Wings done enough, and can they sustain it to be a playoff team this year?
They haven't done enough yet, but this is, I think, a promising start. I think you're seeing players get held a lot more accountable for their mistakes. I mean, Todd McCallum was calling players out after last night's game, and obviously, like that's not always the way to fix things. But I think it's just a step in a different direction that they needed. I think that this team needed a serious wake-up call and a spark. And if you're changing coaches mid-year, like that is probably the number one priority, right? Like sometimes it's because they're so systematically flawed, but a lot of the times I feel like that's more of an off-season change versus a mid-year change. You just want something to like get everyone up and going. So it's a good start because the penalty kill was absolutely crushing them. They've made outright changes to that. That's going to help. You can try to fix the defense and see if you can get them playing at a level that's greater than the sum of their parts because this is a defensively flawed roster. From there, you can work on the offense. I do think this team has a ceiling. I think that if they want to be a true playoff threat, they might need to buy at the deadline. And that's going to be the big question because even when it felt like they had potential, what was it, 2 years ago, like they still sold at the deadline and they moved Bertuzzi going, we're not there yet. And then they had a big offseason. And then you look at last year and they had such a perplexing off season. Like, will they say we're still not there yet and try to take this patient approach? Or do you, at this point, at least try to get them that playoff experience? Like, again, different feeling from a team like the Bruins. They have those future assets. They've built them up over time that I think that they can afford to swing a little bit bigger. Obviously, I don't think you can build a team at the deadline, but you can try to accent it. And adding a top 6 winger could be the accent they need. Maybe adding a good third line scorer. Like, there's tweaks that you can make to put yourself in a better position. And some of it's going to depend on what the playoff picture looks like by then, right? Because you don't know if Montreal is still going to be buying or selling. You don't know about so many of these teams because no one expected them to be here. But I think that they can start gauging it and get a vibe check based on everyone else and do what's best for their team. And at this point, it might be adding a piece or two.
Well, this is a time of year when sometimes hockey can become just a trudge through boringness because you're not yet to the trade deadline. You're not yet to what is usually the all-star break. And so you're just grinding through the gray days of winter. But we certainly have some teams that are keeping it interesting. And of course, we will always talk about it all. But now it is time to wrap up this episode with everyone's very favorite game, except for Steven. He did hear the intro. He acknowledges your point, Shayna.
Mhm.
He heard you. Today, in light of all this on the West that we just kind of hinted at, we are going to fuck, marry, kill the top 3 teams in the Pacific. As is tradition, Sara, you will go first. So, fuck, marry, kill in terms of the top 3 teams in the West: the Vegas Golden Knights, who look to be back to their usual ways; the Edmonton Oilers, who same, and we're not even going to talk about Evander Kane, whatever; and third, the Los Angeles Kings, who I'm not sure what to make of yet. They've lost their last 2 to both Calgary and Edmonton, but prior to that, did beat Winnipeg in overtime. Fuck, marry, kill. Terms of the West leaders: Vegas, Edmonton, and LA.
I'm killing LA. I don't like the inconsistencies. I'm a little hard on them, but I do feel like you got to win the games that you got to win. And there have been so many times they let like a Nashville Predators game slip away. And they've been improving upon that as the season goes on. But it's not as much of an improvement as the Oilers have had. So I am going to fuck the Oilers because I just think the way they turn it on, that's like a playoff team. That is a Stanley Cup champion. I'm going to marry the Golden Knights because they never turned it off. Despite the haters, despite everything, it's like Jack Eichel's having his career year. Mark Stone's just right there with him. The power play, which surprisingly hasn't been good historically, is good right now. Goaltending's good too. Like from top to bottom, even like random players are having really good years. So they just got it all.
Shayna, your picks.
Okay, I'm gonna kill the Kings. I don't want to. Like, let me make this clear. I like this team. I like how they're playing. There's a lot I like about this team and how it's like up and coming players blended with these veterans, and then they're gonna have Drew Doughty back, and I think they're gonna be way better. But I look at it and I just want more. And I love that game against the Oilers the other night. Like I was in and I was like, I will take a series of this. Do I think the result's going to be any different? No, because I don't think the Kings have that elite game-breaking talent at the top of their lineup to match up to some of the best in the West. And when you have guys like Kevin Fiala who are supposed to be that really great supporting cast, so they have this balanced approach. Like he's like 180th in points per 60 this year. Like that is not good at all. You're going to run into problems. So I have to kill them. I don't know what the best path forward is for them at this point because you're saying, hey, you need a game-breaking superstar. Those don't grow on trees. Maybe Byfield can become it. Um, I will fuck Vegas. We all know Vegas is really good. Um, is it the strongest version of this team? No. They have a healthy Mark Stone, though. That's exciting. The defense is really deep. And I think that they're going to do damage in the postseason. I just can't commit to them till I know what batshit crazy thing they're going to do at the deadline. Like maybe then they'll win me over. I have to marry the Oilers. Bestie Leon is wonderful this year. I mean, that is a Hart Trophy candidate. If he killed penalties, he would be on my Selkie ballot tomorrow, but he doesn't. Therefore, I cannot. But his all-around game is so good. I think his passing is so underrated. And I like how the top six is figuring things out because Nugent Hopkins got off to just an awful start. He was not performing well on either end of the ice. He wasn't scoring. Hyman is better too. So you're seeing him readjust after a slow start. And you're seeing some of their depth additions work out, like Podkolzin. That was a really good ad, and Arvidsson. Obviously, it's not perfect, because like players like Jeff Skinner, he's scratched for his third straight game, and there's work to do. The goaltending is inconsistent, but I think that they've become a lot better defensively, and you see it on the PK especially, and they're figuring out things that hurt them in the beginning of the year, and I think they have smart coaching that know how to adjust. So I think you're starting in a good place when you have so many elite players leading the way and they're going to figure out the rest of the picture. So maybe they have a better, shot at everything than last year.
All right. I agree with both of you. I'm killing LA. I feel like they're still not there. They're still not. And like, they're starting to become a patchwork, right? Like, I don't see the plan. Like, what's the plan for this group? You're gonna
Yeah,
have
exactly.
some aging veterans. Like, fine, you're what you are now, but what's happening in 3, 4, 5 years? I don't know. Um, like, I think Edmonton's the better team, but they're so problematic. And I
Yeah.
appreciate you finally bringing up Jeff Skinner, Shayna, because I was going to bring that up too. Oh, goodness gracious. I am going to have a civil union with the Edmonton Oilers and not marry them and fuck Vegas for those reasons. Okay.
That's
That's what
fair.
we got.
That's very
That's what we
fair.
got. All right, my
That's fair.
friends, that will do it for us this week. As always, if you're looking to connect with us outside of our episodes, you can find us on the internet. We are on the socials, Instagram and Twitter at 2_much_man. We are on the Blue Sky at 2-much-man. And you can catch our videos of our episodes on YouTube at youtube.com/at 2_much_man. If you would like to represent us in public, like all the great boots on the ground did during the PWHL tour, or any game where you want to go, or just life in general, check out our merch at toomanymenmerch.com. And until we speak again, we ask, please, that you try to do something, no matter how big or small, to make sure that hockey truly is for everyone. We will talk to you soon.
Love you.
Bye.